morning all. We come to 1 Samuel chapters 19 to 22. Not much on personal salvation here, though you should note that the story is now moving on to the events between King Saul and King David, still focusing on Israel, the congregation, but just now the kings of Israel. No longer about Goliath, who only came in for a moment, and no longer about the Philistines, who only came in for a moment. So the story as the whole Bible is only about Israel, and others only come into the spotlight when they interact with Israel. The two main points to notice here is the new moon, when they had a feast, and David eating of the holy bread. So reading from chapters 19 and verse 1, Saul tries to kill David. And Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David, and Jonathan told David, saying, Saul my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself until the morning, and abide in a secret place, and hide thyself. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee. And what I see, that I tell thee. And Jonathan spoke good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, because his works have been to thee word. Very good. For he did put his life in his hand, and show the Philistine. And Yahweh brought a great salvation for all Israel. Thou sawest it, and didst rejoice. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood, to slay David without a cause? And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swore, As Yahweh liveth, he will not be slain. Verse 11. And Saul sent messengers unto David's house to watch him, and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, If thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. So Michal led David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. Verse 18. So David fled and escaped, and came to Samuel to Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and dwelt in Naioth. And it was told Saul, saying, Behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And verse 23, and he went thither to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him also, and he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. And he stripped off his clothes also, and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day, all that night. Wherefore they say, Is Saul among the prophets? So in previous studies I did not draw attention to the word salvation. Here we see it is not used in a spiritual afterlife context, but in an earthly saving from an event, what Jonathan did. Neither was the salvation by God, it was by Jonathan. Previous uses were also to do with being saved from an earthly event, i.e. in Exodus chapters 14 verse 13, which said, And Moses said unto the people, Fear you not, and stand still, and see the salvation of Yahweh, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, you shall see them no more forever. That's to do with them being drowned in the river, or the sea rather. See also Isaiah chapters 2 verse 1, 1 Samuel chapters 11 verse 13, and 1 Samuel chapters 14 verse 45, to show that salvation is not only for the afterlife or things done by God. For biblical rather than inherited belief meaning of salvation that people have from their teachings, see an article titled What is Needed for Human Salvation on www.forwardtoyahweh.com. Again, we see the result of the Spirit of God being upon people is not to speak in tongues, but to prophesy, as the prophets and Saul did. Moving on to chapters 20, verse 1, Jonathan warns David. And David fled from Naioth in Ramah, and came and said before Jonathan, What have I done? What is my iniquity, and what is my sin before thy father, that he seeketh my life? And he said unto him, God forbid, thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing either great or small, but that he will show it to me. And why would my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. And David swore moreover and said, Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as Yahweh liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death. Then said Jonathan unto David, Whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee. And David said unto Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I shall not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field unto the third day at even. If thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asks leave of me, that he might run to Bethlehem his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. If he says thus, it is well, thy servant shall have peace. But if he be very angry, then be sure that evil is determined by him. Verse 14. And thou shalt not only while yet I live show me the kindness of Yahweh, that I die not, but also thou shalt cut off thy kindness from my house forever. No, not when the Lord hath cut off the enemies of David, everyone from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, Let Yahweh even require it at the hands of David's enemies. And Jonathan caused David to swear again, because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Then Jonathan said to David, Tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty. Verse 24. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat. And the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner, who was the captain of the guards, sat by Saul's side. And David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spoke not anything that day, for he thought something hath befallen him. He is not clean, surely he is not clean. Verse 31. For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him unto me, for he shall surely die. And Jonathan answered Saul his father, and said unto him, Wherefore shall he be slain? What hath he done? And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. So you see how they were testing if Saul was still angry with David or not. Verse 42. And Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, for as much as we have sworn both of us in the name of Yahweh, saying, Yahweh be between me and thee, and between my seed and thy seed forever. And he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. So in short, David hid in the field. Jonathan tested if Saul was still angry with David. Saw he was, so he told David, and David then ran away. As I said, the new moon sacrifice meal being forbidden, you can't eat it if you are unclean. The agreement between David and Jonathan will be relevant in future events, especially after after Jonathan dies with his father in battle, and David becomes king and rescues Jonathan's son. Okay, reading from chapter 21, David and the Holy Bread. Verse 1. Then came David to Nob, to Abimelech, the priest of Abimelech. Then came David to Nob, to Abimelech, the priest. And Abimelech was afraid at the meeting of David, and said unto him, Why art thou alone, and no man with thee? And David said unto Abimelech, the priest, The king hath commanded me a business, and hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabouts I send thee. And what I have appointed myself servant to such and such a place. Now therefore, what is under thy hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or what there is present. And the priest answered David and said, There is no common bread under my hand, but there is hallowed bread. If the young men have kept themselves at least from women. And David answered the priest and said unto him, Of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days, since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common. The bread is in a manner common. Yea, though it were sanctified this day in the vessel. So the priest gave him hallowed bread, for there was no bread there but the showbread that was taken before Yahweh to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. Verse 7. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before Yahweh, and his name was Dog, an Edomite, the chiefest of the herdsmen that belonged to Saul. And David said unto Ahimelech, And is there not the hair under thine hand, spear or sword? For I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. And the priest said, Thy sword, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom thou slewest in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here, wrapped in cloth behind the ephod. If thou wilt take that, take it, for there is no other save that hair. And David said, There is none like that, give it to me. And David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. Verse 21:13, chapter 21:13. And he charged his behavior, and he changed his behavior. This is when David came to the king of the other place. And he changed his behavior before them, and fainted himself mad in their hands, and scabbard on the door of the gate, and let his spittle fall down onto his beard. If you read the whole story or listen to it, you will know what that means. The other people complained, why is David coming on to us? I think they were Philistines, didn't want David there, being coming from Israel, so David pretended he was mad and so forth. In other words, that he was no threat to them. Chapter 22, David at the cave of Adullam, reading from verse 1. David therefore departed thence and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brethren and all his father's house heard it, they went down thither to him, and everyone that was in distress, everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontent, did gather themselves unto him, and he became a captain over them, and there were with him about 400 men. And David went thence to Mizpeh of Moab, and he said unto the king of Moab, Let my father and my mother, I pray thee, come forth and be with you, till I know what God will do for me. Sounds a little bit like Robin Hood, when the establishment was against Robin Hood, and all the people were discomforted with the establishment, fled to Robin Hood to rebel with him. Okay, reading on to, coming to verse 6, chapter 22, Saul kills the priest of Nob. When Saul heard that David was discovered, and the men that were with him, now Saul abode in Gilboa under a tree in Ramoth, having his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing about him. Then Saul said unto his servants that stood about him, Hear now, ye Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds, that all of you have conspired against me, and there is none that show me that my son have made a league with the son of Jesse, and there is none of you that is sorry for me, or showeth unto me that my son have stirred up my servant against me, to lie in wait as at this day? Then answered Dog the Edomite, which was set over the servants of Saul, and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub. And he inquired of Yahweh for him, and gave him victuals, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Then the king sent to call Ahimelech, the priest of the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests that were in Nob, and they came all of them to to the king. Verse 16. And the king said, Thou shalt surely die, Ahimelech, thou and all thy father's house. And the king said unto the footmen that stood about him, Turn and slay the priests of Yahweh, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew when he fled and did not show it to me. But the servants of the king would not put forth their hand to fall upon the priests of Yahweh. And the king said to Dog, Turn thou and fall upon the priest. And Dog the Edomites turned, and he fell upon the priest, and slew on that day 75 persons that did wear a linen ephod. Verse 20. And one of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. Abiathar showed David that Saul had slain Yahweh's priest. And David said unto Abiathar, I knew it that day when Dog the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of thy father's house. So although I've left the bits out, I'm sure you're following the context of the story, what is happening. The event of David and his men eating the holy bread would be used by Yeshua to explain what is lawful and what is not for the Sabbath. Now the law is being practiced when the priest asks David if they are clean and now eating holy things. The men could not eat the bread if they were unclean, i.e. had been defiled with sleeping with women. So Yeshua referred to it in Matthew chapters 12 verse 2, starting at verse 12 verse 2. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. In other words, they're plucking corns to eat when they're hungry. Matthew 12 verse 3. But he, Yeshua, said unto them, Have you not read what David did when he was hungered, and they that were with him, how he entered into the house of God, and did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only the priest? Or have you not read in the law, how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath, and are blameless? In other words, they work, what the Pharisees call work. But I say unto you, that in this place is one greater than the temple. But if you had known what this meaneth, I would have mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. So Yeshua is saying that his disciples plucking corn and eating it was not breaking the law. They were guiltless. Now Christian preachers today who do not keep the law try to teach those who do about the law. They make accusations like a man who shaves is breaking the law. They claim that they should be keeping. In other words, they think that shaving is breaking the law. Yeshua said his disciples were guiltless for their actions of eating, plucking corn on the Sabbath day. Likewise, those who know the law should also know that shaving is not breaking the law. And as Timothy, I think verse 7 to 10, chapter 1, verse 7 to 10 says, those who think they know the law and teach it and don't practice it really don't know what they're talking about. So if you want to know about the law, always ask someone who practices keeping the law, not someone who doesn't keep the law, like the wrong days of worship and keeping Easter and all those kind of stuff. Shalom, until tomorrow, God willing.